In this slide cast, we're going to look at project control. So this is the project management process that we looked at in the previous slide cast. Remember, there's initiating, where you're getting it all started, planning, where you're figuring out what you're going to do, executing, where you're actually doing the work. This is when you sort of organize people to do the work. This is when you making sure everyone's doing the job properly, and then the closing processes. Overlooking all of that is what's called the controlling processes. This is when you're making sure that the project's going to be coming in on time. So that's what we're looking at for this. So controlling is keeping the job on course. So you're monitoring and measuring progress, costs and quality. You're asking, am I going to achieve my project objectives? If not, why not? If I am, well, that's great. You're trying to detect variances. A variance is a change, something that's different from what you planned. Right at the beginning of the project, you will have planned what you're going to do. A variance is something that's not what you planned, or it's different from what you planned. For example, you might have planned to have installed a pipeline in a week, but then when you are actually doing the work and you're monitoring it, you find that it's taken 2 weeks to do. That is a variance. It's a change from what you planned to do. And you need to do something about it. You need to find out why it happened. If nothing else, just make sure it doesn't happen again. If it's an ongoing issue, if you say allowed a week to do a pipeline and 2 weeks on it's only half finished, then you're in a lot of trouble. So you need to find out why is this happening, and how can I help? It might be I need to put more resources into it. It might be that I need to get a new foreman because he's not doing it right. It might be that they don't have enough diggers. It might be that one of the labourers isn't performing. Whatever, you need to find out what the problem is and fix it. So in project control, you're asking, are we on time? If not, how far are we behind? What can we do to bring ourselves back on time? Are we on budget? Are we going to be tracking up, over or under? How do we get the project back to on time and on budget? When will the project be complete, and what will the final budget be? Now, for these slide casts, we're just going to be looking at time, scope and time. We're not looking at cost. Cost will be looked at later on in the course. So the techniques, how do we do it? The first most important thing is that we break the project down into smaller parts. And we looked at this in the previous slide casts, where we take the scope of the project and we break it down into little bits. You can't manage a whole project. You can manage a whole lot of smaller projects. So that's what you're doing. You manage the big project by splitting it into a whole lot of little ones and managing those little projects. Baselines, right at the start of the project, you've got to, when you've finished your planning, you need to set out what's called a baseline. The baseline says, this is what we plan to do. We plan to do this work at this particular time. We plan to do this much work for this much money. So, and you do that at the end of the planning process before you start the work, so that you have something to compare to. When you're actually doing the work, you compare the actual progress to what you planned, your baseline. Regular monitoring and updating, that is one of the main things that a manager does when something's happening, is you're monitoring. You're going out there and you're checking, what is being done? Is it being done to plan? So you're updating your plan, you're updating your schedule. Completion criteria, you need to figure out, when do we think a deliverable or a work item, an activity, is actually finished. So you need to be able to say, yes, this one is complete. Milestones, it's a good idea to sort of have a whole lot of little milestones along the way. A milestone is like a checkpoint. If you are driving a car from, say, Auckland to Wellington, one of your first checkpoints might be Hamilton. So you think, okay, we're going to drive from Auckland to Wellington, we're going to do it in 7 hours. Our first checkpoint is Hamilton, we should be there in 1.5 hours. So you say, okay, my first milestone is Hamilton, we should be there in 1.5 hours. If you're there 2 hours, then you know that you're running late. If you're there in 1 hour, you know you're running early. So that's the good thing about a milestone, is it's a point where you stop and look and say, how are we going? And formal sign-off on changes. When changes happen, and changes are allowed to happen, you need the client to agree to them. That concludes the slidecast. The next slidecast we're going to look at how we manage scope.